Mark Andrea Maurizi is the current world junior chess champion. I have faced him in the Grand Chess Open, the biggest tournament in the entire world, including Magnus Carlsen, Dean Lorraine, Hans Niemann, and so many top grandmasters. So my opponent has here those three passwords, all of them want to become a new queen. He played the move bishop d4, just take a look at this amazing move. Controlling the entire diagonal, attacking my rook, the second rook, and this pawn on g7. I mean, this is absolutely insane. Let me walk you through the toughest game I have ever played in my chess career. What's up, chess player, and welcome to the Journey to Grandmaster, the place where you can improve every single aspect of your chess game. My opponent was white and he started with the move e4, and of course I played my favorite opening, the move d6, because I knew that the first 15 to 20 moves I don't need to worry about getting in trouble. I don't care if I'm playing the world champion, I know my stuff here and I feel very comfortable. By the way, Lichess always says d6 is an inaccuracy, which is very annoying for me. Like, do something about it. d6 is a very powerful, very nice move. It's not an inaccuracy. It brought me so many chess victories, I can be never thankful enough. Anyway, my opponent plays d4, I go knight f6, he plays knight to c3, and after e5 we have the starting position of the Philidor defense. Now there are a few options. You can just take the pawn on e5 going into the Philidor endgame. I love playing this endgame a lot. Or you can play knight f3, which is the main line theory, and then you want to take the pawn on e5, develop your pieces as active as possible, and fight for the center. Instead, my opponent played here the move knight g to e2. It's not the main line, but I somehow psychologically thought he's gonna play it, because he played it once in his chess.com online blitz. I mean, this is nowadays preparation. You don't just check what your opponent is doing in the classical chess games he played before, but also you check his online games, because, well, chances are he might try something like that. And I felt like it makes sense. He wants to outplay me. He's like 200 points more than me. He's playing as white, wants to win the game. So he doesn't want to go into the mainline zero, which, well, I know pretty good. So he wants to get a playable position where he can just attack me and destroy me. He's very young, 16 years old. He's obviously wants to get some sharp position with attacking chances. But fortunately enough, I knew what to do here. I played the move c6. Now he plays h3 immediately, which is another kind of a sideline. He wants to play g4 immediately, attacking my king side, playing g5, and then like I need to go back. It's not that simple to do it as black. Well, instead, I played the move b5. I'm creating counter chances. So always remember, you can never just sit there and wait for your opponent to come after you. You cannot be too passive and wait for him to come and beat the shit out of you. Instead, you need to create your counterplay. You need to be active. If your opponent is attacking you on one side of the board, attack him on the other side of the board, or answer in the center. This is the golden principle. Now, he cannot play g4 immediately, because I'm gonna play b4, attack his knight, and when the knight goes away, I'm gonna just pick up that very key central pawn, and this is not funny for him. So he's playing a3, which is like the main move here, stopping my idea to play b4. And then I'm playing the move h5. Pretty tricky move, not the main line, but the engine recommends it, and thank God I still knew it. I want to stop his plan completely. If you think about it, he wanted to play g4 and knight g3, and that would be perfect. The knight would be coming to f5, but now I'm stopping the entire plan. But he's so strong that he still knew what to do, even though it's a sideline of a sideline. He plays here the move knight to g1, which hasn't been played before at all in the chess history. But thank God I have prepared with engine as well, so I still knew what to do here. So the idea is, he's like wasting so much time. It's exactly what I always recommend you never do. Don't make more than one move with the same piece in the opening. But if you're a world champion, you are allowed to break those rules. Well, there is justification behind it. He wants to get back to f3, which is exactly what happened. Knight b to g7, knight f3. Now we have like a normal Philidor position. I have two extra tempi because he played knight e2 and g1 back, but I have this weird pawn on h5, which normally like I would never play h5 if he would just have played knight to f3, because it creates this huge hole on g5. Otherwise, it's never possible for white to use it, because as long as you play knight g5, I can just play h6. Now, that would always become an issue for me, and the f7 pawn might be a weakness, so well, it's for you to decide whether those two tempi worth it or not. Anyway, I continue my development. Bishop goes to b7. He plays bishop to e2, which was kind of a little bit surprising for me. I was rather expecting bishop to d3, but now I play the move a5. I continue in the same manner. I have to be active. I mean, there is no way back. And I want still to put pressure on this e4 pawn. It's like a central pawn, very important. So I'm creating this threat of b4 once again, attacking that knight, and then the knight goes away, I pick up that pawn. This is a very clear, straightforward plan, but it's not like it's very simple to do something against it. Well, my opponent has found a perfect way. He played the move knight g5, using the fact that, well, I cannot play h5, h6, because pawns don't go back, unfortunately. But I still played the move b4. I still wanted to be active. I decided, like, I cannot be afraid of him. Yes, he's a very strong guy, but I felt somehow a little bit relaxed because, like, nobody is expecting anything from me. I am playing against a super grandmaster, so if I lose, I lose. I just need to show my best chess, and what happens, happens, right? So I played that. My opponent takes here on e5, and this is becoming crazy. And this is exactly what happens when you play against very strong guys. The positions are so tricky. I don't know how it works. When you play against like 2200 or 2000 rated player, the game is like normal. Like you develop your pieces, you attack, he defends, you go forward, he goes back, you crash, and you win. Everything is great. But here, it's like every move is a total mess. Something crazy going on. You can't have just a normal game because they don't want to have a normal game. They want to create some craziness on the board so they can outplay you. Because it's much more difficult to navigate in the insane position than it is in some kind of a normal solid one. Now I have a choice between taking the knight, taking this pawn with a pawn and the knight. I have calculated so much here. So if I take with the pawn, for example, there is bishop to c4, just sacrificing that knight. And then crazy lines. It turns out if you take with the knight, it's actually not that great because I can take on b2, sacrificing my queen because I attack the a1 rook. I mean, this is super crazy, but it's not that great for white. The right move is bishop takes f3, and you are just a knight down there, but you play queen f3, and you say that black's development is so poor, the skin on e7 is incredibly bad placed, and this is your advantage, and the engine says it's better for white. I didn't want to create such a mess from my position. So instead of that, I just took here with the knight, which is, thank God, also the best move according to the engine. I'm still attacking that knight, and, well, so far I'm doing all of the logical moves. My opponent plays knight to a4, because, well, now the knight is really hanging. I play bishop e7, so that now, even if he kicks my knight away and then attacks the f7 pawn with the bishop, I can just castle and protect my f7 rook. I'm totally fine. Also, if he ever plays bishop to c4, I still have this d5 opportunity. d5 is like the best move in the fillet or defense you can make, because you fight for the center, you basically overtake the initiative, so every time you can play d5, you should play d5. Now, my opponent plays bishop to e3, developing a new piece. This is what they do on a high level. They follow these very important chess principles. Yes, sometimes they do it in a weird way, like my opponent with knight e2, knight g1, but then it still comes to this very simple but yet the most important rule in chess: development is the key to success. You need to bring all of your pieces into the game as fast as possible, and you should make it as active as possible. So he is playing bishop e3. Why? Because not only because he just wants to develop your bishop. And by the way, every time your opponent makes a move, you must try to understand what he wants to achieve with this move. You should never think like, okay, he's just developing, let me do my stuff. No, always think what is the idea behind that move. And it turns out there is a very good idea. This knight on a4, it's like doing absolutely nothing right now on the board. So he wants to play knight to b6 with a tempo, attacking my rook. When the rook goes away, he plays knight to c4, and that's a completely different knight, right? The knight on a4 is, yeah, pretty upset there, but once he remaneuvers it to c4, that's a different story. So I want to stop that. I'm playing the move c5, which is a pretty responsible decision, but I like that I put pressure on this e4 pawn. I attack it twice, I open up this bishop, it's just a perfect bishop now, and I stopped that idea of knight b6. So it's a multi-purpose move. I always recommend you do those when you at the same time attack and defend or maybe create multiple threats. It's always great, and this is the resource so many higher rated players are using. Now, of course, it creates some weaknesses for me, like bishop b5 check is possible, but I thought I have multiple ways to deal with it. Even just king to f8 seems to be normal. The king is pretty safe. The rook is, by the way, not that passive along the h-file, and I'm still attacking the central pawn. Maybe I'm gonna have the d5 opportunity in the right moment, and so on. So my opponent, instead of that, played the move f4, just attacking my knight, and I was aware of that. By the way, back to this main principle, never make a move in chess without thinking what your opponent can do, because this is like a threat. You always start with the most active opportunities, which are checks, captures, threats, and active moves. And of course, it's clear what the checks and captures are. With threats, it's becoming more tricky, but a threat is basically just attacking one of your pieces or creating something dangerous for you on the next move. So when I played the move c5, I obviously calculated what's going to happen after f4. And I felt I should have some activity here, because it can't be that my opponent has a knight on a4, completely not taking part, all of my pieces are active, I have a solid center, I must have some tactical opportunities there. This is how it works at chess. So I have found it. I played the move knight f to d7. I'm sacrificing my knight, but if you take it, I'm going to take that knight on g5, I'm going to free up my pieces, and that position turns out to be good for me. So my opponent didn't take, he played the move h4 instead. And yes, I saw that move, but I felt like that should be good for me, because I get this beautiful square on g4 and I attack the bishop. You can never tolerate this knight, so you must take it. But then I get a pair of bishops in such an open position with this knight on a4 doing absolutely nothing. That must mean something. The drawback is, of course, that I give up the pawn. This is exactly what happened. And up to this point, I have played this opening just in a perfect way. So now I'm getting the advantage. It's like minus 0.7 for black. This is a nice outcome of the opening when you're playing as black against the world champion. And I'm very thankful for this opening and the experience I have here in the Philidor defense. In fact, I have made an entire course, 10-day opening mastery, where I explain in so many deep details how you can play this opening as well as so many others to forget about all of the opening problems forever. You build an entire opening repertoire, holistic, lifetime, and complete in just 10 days for many years to come at the price of a single opening course. This is a nice offer which is gonna disappear soon, so feel free to visit the website not to miss it. Take a look at the reviews, take a look at the free tutorials just to get a taste whether it's something for you. Take a look at the review from Altsu Chess, respected chess channel, which goes deep into what makes this course so great. What's great about this course is that it doesn't really just cover the opening lines, which don't really help you. So many courses do it. You learn like 30 moves variations, and then you never face it in real game, because those lines are for grandmasters, for top level, but it doesn't help you at all. Instead, we focus on real practical stuff, on the stuff that people really play at your level and what you do against it. And of course, we are all about practical application, about these ideas, not like the variations itself, but rather the ideas that you need to learn and master to outplay your opponents. And it's all about like understanding what to do after the opening, in the middle game, and sometimes even going into the end game. Understanding those ideas is the key. So it's not just about openings, it's about developing your chess skills overall, and people seem to be so happy with it. If for some reason you're not, you always have the opportunity to get your money back with a 7-day 100% money back guarantee. So back to this position, it's time for me to decide what do I do next, how do I continue. I unfortunately didn't really understand that this is so good for me. I mean, I'm playing against such a strong guy, he's making all of his moves very confidently, and he just won a pawn. So I wouldn't really believe if somebody would tell me this is much better for black. Turns out I should just play knight to f6, accept the fact I'm a pawn down, don't really care about it, and if he plays just queen f3, I play queen to c7, enjoy my two bishops advantage, and this is so difficult to play as white, it turns out. I wasn't aware of it, unfortunately. And in this position, I would just have a fantastic advantage, but it's so far, unfortunately, just beyond my understanding how you can just quietly give up the pawn and just continue your development. Just even castle here without any risk, and then enjoy playing with two bishops and destroying your opponent. Instead, I wanted to get something more concrete, so I took here on g5 immediately. That was my idea. And the point is, my opponent cannot take it with the h-pawn because of the pin. So he should take with the f-pawn, and then his pawn structure is not really great, and I thought I have this knight to e5, like the outpost on e5 is such a beautiful one for the knight, but I actually never played it, because I played bishop c6 first to attack the knight, and after b3 I played queen to e7. I'm attacking the pawn on e4, and here I felt like my position should be good. This knight is absolutely offside, and my pawn structure is better than his. That should be at least equal for me. So I offered to draw here. Well, I normally never do it, but here I felt like I have every right to do that. Still, my opponent was playing as white. He is much higher rated, so he wanted to win the game. He took here on b4, and then he played the move h5. The idea wasn't that clear for me, but then I realized he just wants to create this passer, and that should be his chances. And once again, it's unbelievable for me. The engine says I should just castle right into this attack in the spirit of Bobby Fischer here, because the attack is absolutely not dangerous for me. But can you believe it during a real game against such a strong opponent? It turns out you can just play rook to e8, just ignore the entire attack he can take, but then you take on e4, you control everything, you attack the bishop, you attack the queen, everything is perfect for you. I wanted to get something more solid, something more clear, so I just took the pawn on e4. This is a very human decision. This is the difference, unfortunately, between the engine and the human being. You want, like, if your king is less secure, you want to exchange the queens and make sure your opponent cannot checkmate you. Well, I was pretty satisfied with this endgame because I also saw what I am about to do after these long castles. Yes, the g2 pawn is hanging, but you don't really want to take it, because then rook to e1 comes and my king is kind of in trouble. D6 pawn is hanging. Instead, what I wanted to play is d5. And I was very optimistic about it, because it's like the bishop in the center of the board controls pretty much everything. The pawn is protecting it, so it's very solid, and we have opposite colors bishops. So as long as this knight doesn't attack the bishop anyhow, and I only see knight c5, in which case I just exchange it, then I'm completely fine with it. The bishop is like cementing everything, and I was very proud of it. Now my opponent plays rook to h4, and I thought, well, he wants to play g4 now, and then those pawns are going to be very strong. The pawn is hanging, so why can't I just take it? And this is fine. I just made my first mistake here after rook d2. It turns out I should have just played bishop f3, and of course I thought about it, attacking that pawn, but it seemed to me that I'm just pushing this pawn to h6, where it becomes more dangerous. In fact, it wasn't like that my opponent wasn't playing h6 for a very long time, and I should have provoked it here. And then after h6, I actually can just exchange the pawn and play the move c4. And then I'm not losing the pawn, because on c5 it was hanging and my opponent took it. But now I'm just not losing anything. You cannot take the pawn because the knight is hanging, and I still have an extra pawn. Then I can play f6, king f7, and actually everything is good for me. I failed to realize it. I played bishop to e4 instead, which allows my opponent to take this pawn on c5. And I thought it's fine for me. We have opposite colors bishops, the material is equal. What can be wrong about it? But it's actually much better. Now suddenly for white it's more like +1. I have a weakness here, my opponent has a better pawn structure, and even though I still have that bishop, I have a problem with the king suddenly, because I would be happy to play like king d7 and improve its position, but I can't, because my opponent is gonna win my bishop thanks to the pin. So this becoming a problem for me. I actually started with rook to h7 first, because I anticipated if my opponent takes the pawn, then I'm gonna play rook a1, king goes away, and I play rook to g1, I attack the pawn and win it. My opponent played king to b2 to stop it. By the way, very useful advice at this point, always think about your opponent's counterplay, what he can do. If he would just have taken the pawn on b4 after rook a1 and rook g1, it's not really difficult for me. But he thought, what I'm gonna do, and then he stopped my counterplay, and then the pawn is still hanging. This is how you should play if you want to become stronger in chess. So now I played rook to b8. I didn't really like it because the rook becoming more passive, but I still didn't see where my opponent is gonna break through. Here it comes. He plays the move c4. Now, fortunately, I have remembered about this very important rule in chess, which is called en passant, and I can take here the pawn on c3. And I'm actually was pretty happy about it because the pawn on b4 was a huge weakness, and now I get rid of it. The drawback is, of course, that my opponent gets a free pawn now, a passer, and this pawn is going very, very fast forward. And for me, it's still difficult to do something about my king. Like I would be happy to play king e6 immediately or king to c6, but I can never go to d7 because of my bishop. I played the move f6. I wanted to somehow exchange the pawns here, and that should simplify my life hugely. But suddenly my opponent plays g6. This is the move I somehow missed, at least before I played f6. The problem is, yes, the engine says I can take it, but I was so afraid of it, because when I take, my opponent plays rook takes d5, and then this king is in trouble. I cannot play bishop f7 because of rook e4, otherwise my bishop has lost its stability. And yeah, the engine says you can just play rook h6 and you are fine here, and probably I should have done it, but somehow it felt risky and I didn't go for it. Instead, I played rook to h8 back, but now my opponent is starting pushing that pawn. It's not really that simple to stop it, and it's not really that simple to find something useful to do. So I decided I need to relocate this rook to make it more active. So I played rook to a8, plays b5, I play rook to a1, I achieve my goal, and he plays rook to d4. Now I have got a few checks. I have to mention I was in severe time trouble at this point. I have like 5 minutes. By the way, my opponent as well. He has even less. He has a little bit more than 1 minute at this point. But it's so, like, the pressure is so high during this moment. I can't really even express it. I'm giving a lot of checks. King goes to a5, rook to a1, king to b4. We have repeated the position a few times because he needed to get some time. And, well, I didn't really see what else I can do except for that. And then after king to b6, finally, let me correct the notation here, I played the move king to d7, because now I'm sacrificing that bishop, but I'm certain checkmate in 1, so you cannot take it, obviously. The problem is my opponent plays king to d7, and now there is no check anymore. Now the bishop is hanging, so I have to play king to e6. But now this pawn is coming forward, b6. And this position is still equal. I mean, I was very worried. I honestly thought that this should actually be bad for me at this point. But the engine says it's 0-0-0, and the move, unfortunately, I haven't found it. I thought about attacking the bishop from here, rook to c1, but it's not that great. Turns out the right move is rook to a5. I mean, attacking the bishop from the side, and then when it goes away, then rook a8, controlling all of the squares, ready to give a lot of checks for this king, and then everything is fine. Unfortunately, that was too difficult for me in this time trouble, and instead I made the move f5. And f5 is like the biggest mistake up to this point, at least in this game. I'm defending the pawn, but I felt like it's a very dangerous move. And my opponent, he's very strong, world champion after all, he plays h6 immediately. And here is the moment I realized I did something very wrong, because that pawn is moving, he's threatening, if I take on h6 with my pawn, he just plays g7, rook g8, and then bishop f8, and this is not fun at all. My rook can never escape out of it. So instead, I came up with a move f4. The engine is not a big fan of it, but I felt like from a practical point of view, this should be the best chance. And that was true, because after a long thought, my opponent sacrificed an exchange here. I have no idea why, because it's not necessary for him. He could have just taken the pawn on f4. Did that, and then he played the move bishop to d4, and we are back to the initial position of this video, with this bishop attacking absolutely everything along this diagonal. And I thought for a long time, because how do I understand whether rook d1 or rook to a8 is better? This is the mistake, because both of the moves are fine, both are 0-0-0, so I should have just saved a little bit of time and made my move faster. I decided to play rook a8 in the end of the day, because psychologically it felt easier, like if I control this back rank with all of my rooks. Bishop takes g7, and I'm giving a lot of checks. That far I saw. King goes to b5. Now b7 is not such a huge threat because I have a pin, so I have a little bit of time here to make an active move. By the way, thanks a lot to the sponsor of this video, the Chestnut Company, for letting me using this board for the analysis, for all of my trainings, for playing games. It completely changed my experience with chess training. I mean, I enjoy doing it so much. I have my game here with the time situation, with all of the variations from lead chess. I can just open it up, I can use it for my analysis, then all of the moves are saved here. It's very convenient to use it. They have a special offer right now, huge discount. Just use the link in the description or the Journey to Grandmaster coupon to get it. If you are interested, I can sincerely recommend it. And I played here the move king to f5. Well, I have got a free move, so why not? I'm defending all of my pawns. Suddenly I realized I actually have two connected passers myself. If I'm given like a few moves, I'm gonna play f3, f2, and threaten f1 with a check. That would be a horrible turn of event for white. So my opponent played bishop to d4, trying to stop it. Like h7 was already not fast enough. I'm gonna play f3, and suddenly black is winning there. So after bishop to d4, I saw, well, there is a pawn hanging here on g6, and I can just take it with my king. Oh my god, I have achieved that. That's going to be much simpler for me. So I felt very optimistic. I took that pawn. Remember, I have like 34 seconds. So that means I have made this move king takes g7 with 4 seconds on the clock, because I don't have any time to push my pawns. But here it comes a very important moment in the game. The engine once again says, it doesn't matter what you do, it's 0-0-0, always a draw. But I felt like if I would have made the right decision here, then it would be much simpler for me to make a draw. The right one, in my opinion, is rook c to e8, because I am supporting my pawn, and I just want to go forwards no matter what. I somehow, with 30 seconds on the clock, was very worried that after rook to f6, king to h7 or something similar, my opponent is gonna play bishop to e3, he's gonna block that pawn, protect that pawn, and then rook f7 is coming, b7 is coming, and I'm not gonna handle it. But it turns out it's actually pretty good. I have rook e5 check, pushing the king away, then rook to e7 back, controlling the 7th rank, and that turns out to be fine for black. Unfortunately, I haven't really realized it. I saw the pawn that I can take here on h6, so this is what I said. The more pawns I take, the simpler it is, the closer I am to making a draw with this monster. But the problem is, in this position, it's basically inevitable for me to avoid the rook and bishop versus rook endgame. This is not a fun endgame at all. Here I had another chance. After rook g4, once again, I still have like 30 seconds for every move, so my time is not bigger. But I made a mistake here. I played king to h5 because somehow psychologically I didn't want to have my king on the dark squares to avoid a lot of checks. But the right move was rook to e1. I want, like, always put your rook behind the passed pawn. It doesn't matter whether it's your pawn or your opponent's pawn. Always put the rook behind. This is a very, very useful rule. And I had this chance. Could have just played rook to e1. There is even no check, so I have no idea what I was afraid of. And then I put my rook over there, and then it's much simpler, much better for me. The rook is more active. Although I was afraid of something like bishop to c5, rook b1, bishop to b4, he's blocking it, and then b7 is coming, so it wasn't that easy. So I played the move king to h5 instead, but now rook to g1, my opponent is coming there. I play rook to a to d1. We were just shuffling the pieces around, but it was clear to both of us that sooner or later we are gonna reach that position with bishop and rook, and finally it happened. Somewhere here, goes to f7, bishop to d6, rook c8 check, goes to c7, blocking this check. Of course, like, it's only white who can play for win. I play the move rook to f2, king goes to d7, rook c to f8, b7, rook check. He's just basically putting so much pressure on me. I don't have any time. Probably I should have just used this time to make my moves as fast as possible, because, well, we still know what's gonna happen, but of course it's important not to blunder somehow. I don't know, some weird promotion into g6, bishop f5, d8 check, e4, rook f8. Somehow I was hallucinating here. I thought for a moment, if I control the back rank with both of my rooks, then never anything bad can happen, because I'm gonna just sacrifice both of my rooks, and he's gonna have a bishop in the end of the day. I completely forgot about the fact that he can just take with the bishop immediately, then we still reach the same endgame. Anyway, rook d8, rook f8, b6 check, king goes to f7. Now finally he plays b8 queen. I take it, and we reach this position. And theoretically, it's a draw, of course. You need to survive the 50 moves here with the rook against the rook and bishop. But the problem is, practically, it's so difficult, especially when you don't have any time. Your opponent puts so much pressure, constantly creating threats, and I just couldn't handle this pressure. The endgame was very, very complicated. Rook h8, bishop f5, rook h4 check, king d5. So far so good. I mean, there are different ways to play it. Rook to b1, h3. Rook goes to b7 with the check, king g6, into e6, rook f3. I'm trying to cut this king, not to allow it to go forward. Rook g7 check, king goes to h5, rook g8, in h4. Somehow I thought that if I reach that h1 corner, which is not the right corner for the bishop, it's going to be simpler for me. Well, it didn't really work out. Into d5, rook f1, into e4. He's just coming. He's creating those threats. Rook g3. Somewhere at this point, bishop f4. Here I made a mistake. I made a huge blunder. I played the move king to h1. This move is losing. But my opponent didn't use it. I mean, even for the world champion, it's a very complicated endgame. It turns out rook to h3 check is the only right move to still win the game. Not obvious for me at all, don't ask me why. But my opponent played the move rook to g7 instead, which is another blunder. You're gonna see so many blunders here because it's just crazy. We don't have any time, we don't know what to do. Chess is just too complicated for human beings. Rook h7, king to g2, rook h2 check. This is the type of ending that you have like once in a lifetime. But if you do, you absolutely need to know what to do here. Otherwise, it's so difficult. Rook a2 he played, which is another blunder. Once again, there is no advantage now. It's a draw once again, but just very next move seems like a logical thing. I want to cut the king away. I'm making a mistake. My opponent makes another mistake, bishop g3, and it's not winning again. I play king h1, another blunder, and now it's winning again. I mean, that was absolutely crazy. King e3, another blunder, it's not winning right now. In most of the cases, not about this objective evaluation where it's winning or draw. It's like about creating those threats, creating those pressure against your opponent, and yeah, I couldn't handle it. And somehow, subconsciously, I also felt when I was getting into this endgame, I'm not gonna hold it. And this is what happened. Although this is once again a draw, and I even almost found the right pattern. So here, rook a3, king goes to g4, rook a8. This is the key position after rook to b2. Here I'm making a blunder. Afterwards, I couldn't recover at all. Like afterwards, he didn't give me any chances. But here it turns out if I just stay with the king, like king to f1, and just do nothing, it's very difficult to do something, because if you go to this side, I give you check from here. If you go to this side, then it's very difficult to do something because well, my king is not in the corner. I can give you check from here and then cut you there. So this was a draw, but unfortunately, I played the move rook to a4 check, which is completely losing, because now my opponent plays king to h3, and there is a background problem. I completely forgot about it. This is how exhausted I was by this game. I played the move king to f1, which doesn't help at all. I should have played rook a1 still. My opponent plays rook to f2, king goes back to g1, and now he plays rook to f3. And he is threatening bishop to h2 check, king h1, and rook f1 checkmate. I play rook a2 to stop that check. He plays bishop f4. Now it's completely winning no matter what I do, because he just plays bishop e3. The only move is king to h1, and he plays rook f2, threatening checkmate in one, and there is absolutely nothing I can do. Just king to g1, but now he plays rook to a2, discover check, wins my rook, and I have to resign. Even though I have lost here, I felt pretty proud of myself in this game, because for a vast majority of the game, I played really good. I was playing as black. I had a very good position. Then I went into the end game. Like the moment I reached the end game, I thought, well, I have done my task minimum. I have survived till the end game, and the end game seems to be good. And I played it pretty good. I have got then the drawish position completely equal, but unfortunately, this lack of technical knowledge, the ability to handle this entire pressure at the end of the day, that wasn't enough for me. So the few key lessons I have taken from it, first of all, I'm capable of playing so strong against super grandmasters. It's like already a good thing to know. Secondly, I just need to work on my time management so that I have enough time for the decisive part of the game. And I need to really improve my technical knowledge to be able to defend those slightly worse endgames. Let me know in the comments, please, what is your main takeaway from this game? And if you enjoyed it, consider hitting the like button and, of course, subscribing to the channel because we have a goal of reaching 10,000 subscribers till 1st of May, my birthday, to make my dream true and to grow this amazing community. I'm so happy to have you guys, to be of service to you and to make those helpful, hopefully helpful videos. You can tell me in the comments. So if it's not difficult for you, it would mean a word for me if you subscribe to the channel. Thank you very much. Now, I have prepared for you a video where I share with you 3 most important attacking principles, which if you master and really use it properly in your games, you're going to become unstoppable. So definitely take a look at it here and you're going to improve your chess immediately.